Okay, welcome back. I will be basing the talk that I'm giving today on the four books, three books that's been published, and the one book that I'll be is coming out at the end of the year, specifically on the climate change and clean energy area. And some of the things I've talked about has also been discussed in the advisory board that I invited to join at London University and Imperial College, and also on the with the Climate Change Committee Working Group in the UK. The areas that I plan to cover are basically to start really just first of all have a global view about energy. Then we talk very much on the fossil to renewable transformation that is going through globally at this moment in time, together with the sort of different carbon solutions and innovations that are going on in globally, but also in China and other areas that are relevant to Hong Kong. Then we will focus on the Hong Kong climate and energy challenges, together with the power challenges to Hong Kong, particularly the carbon neutrality challenge from the Paris Agreement, which Hong Kong under PRC is part of the party. Then what are the possible, we also will have a look at the China climate actions that are going on, plus international cooperation opportunities and corporate improvements that can go on to Hong Kong. So globally, very quickly, the mega trends, the climate, there is now more or less common agreement that the climate change is one of the most urgent problem facing the world. And there are lots of public interest and demonstrations in this in Europe and in the UK. You probably heard about the recent demonstration in London, which brought London to a standstill, and the resultant declaration that there is a climate emergency by the Parliament of the UK. And these are very interesting, and these are actually forcing a lot of the actions, and the politicians are enacting regulations and new policies in these areas. These include clean energy, energy efficiency policies that a lot of my previous excellent speakers have all covered. And they are really, energy transformation is progressing really aggressively globally, with fossil fuel declining and renewable rising. And I'll show you a case study of that with my work with the International Energy Authority in Paris. Coal actually is declining globally, but actually it is still staying in some of the Asia emerging economy, particularly like Vietnam. But they are now progressing more to the clean coal area, and I'll cover that. And decarbonization is really the key word at this moment in time. Decarbonization of the transport sector, electricity sector. These are mega trends and inevitable trends. And recently, when I was invited to talk to the Prime Minister office of one of the leading Asian countries, they tell me decarbonization, climate change is a train that has a moving train. You know, you have to decide whether to get on it or not as a country. And most Asia and most of the countries in the world have decided that this is a train they must get on. Otherwise, there's no future or sustainable economic development for them. So a lot of the governments have put forward new energy policies, and I'll talk about that, clean energy policies, carbon policies, CETS, carbon trading, emission trading, very important new policy. China have just put out one of the biggest carbon trading schemes in the world, just covering one sector, and the power sector, and that's already bigger than the existing EU carbon emission trading scheme. TCFD is going to be a word that you're going to hear a lot more about. This is a task force on climate finance disclosure. And last time when I was invited to speak in Hong Kong by the Financial Times, the head of the SFC in Hong Kong said that this is, in his view, one of the best governance, climate governance systems that is going to be pushed out by the G20 finance ministers, led by the governor of England, the bank governor of England. And this is going to be a system that has been going to, I think you will see a lot of this being pushed into Hong Kong, improving the governance of companies in Hong Kong. And it's going to have a major impact on all the listed companies in Hong Kong. Renewables is really going fast, and we heard excellent speaker talking about renewable in China and others. And really, the key word is DDD, digitization, decarbonization, decentralization, and distributed power is very important. Electrification is going to rise, and experts are forecasting this is going to rise by about 3 to 4 times in the next 20 to 30 years. So this emphasized the importance for Hong Kong to consider decarbonization of the power supply as soon as possible to support its sustainable developments. Carbon solutions are going on, and these are really being worked on in the US, in Canada, in Europe. Things like carbon capture and some very innovative things are being talked about here, particularly capturing the CO2 and using it to make valuable products like bioplastic and biofuel. And I'll talk about that. I think a lot of things you'll hear about: low carbon industrial transformation, low carbon economy. This is all real, this is not talk. Globally, the International Renewable Energy Association just published figures that the low carbon economy growth in the world has created 10 million jobs. Just in China, 4 million new jobs been created in the low carbon economy and the renewable sector. This is a major growth area for Hong Kong if you look forward in your economic policy. The green low carbon cities, designs and things like that are progressing. China is pushing a lot of low carbon city. Singapore is pushing a lot of low carbon city. Copenhagen is really developing the low carbon city to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. And these have created jobs, improved the living environment, reduced pollution. These are not just concepts, these are reality. Things are going on, and a lot of things that Hong Kong can cooperate and work with international partners in its improvement of the environment and reduction of pollution. So let me show you. This is a chart that I've been working on with the International Energy Authority in Paris when they advised me I was an advisor to their World Energy Outlook. This is a very interesting chart. In the last 30 years, this has been a fossil fuel story with growth of coal, oil, gas. But if you look ahead to the next 30 years, to 2040, this is going to be a clean energy story. Coal, oil growth will be low, but they are not going away. We still need fossil fuel. Gas will be one of the transitional fuel, clean fuels. But the major growth will be in renewable areas. Excuse me, it's not going. Okay, 你一個人喺度幫我得唔得？ Yeah. 我叫你轉你就轉啦，好唔好？ And then this start, and this is the chart we talk about green investment going up. And this is the chart over the 10 years. It shows that over $1 trillion being invested in clean renewable investment globally. And that's going up by $200 billion per year. And this is a trend that is going to rise, continue for the next few years. So this shows really the growth of low carbon economy and green investment. Next chart. So let's look a little bit at the various renewable area growth. Solar, you can see this is global growth in all the countries that are going on in solar. And particularly, this growth has been driven by several things. One, solar actually have reduced costs by 70% over the last 5 years. This is the innovation that are going on. So for Hong Kong, you're coming at the right time because you are now coming to get to reap the benefit of solar power at a lower cost than 10 years ago. So it's now actually very competitive, and the latest international figures are showing that solar power is competitive towards fossil fuel. And in this area, you can see some of the key countries that are highest in solar power, including China, US, Japan, and others. Next. Wind rising again. And wind, this includes both onshore and offshore wind. And this has been, again, tremendous cost reduction and innovation going on. There's been 23% reduction in wind power. At this moment in time in UK, onshore wind is competitive towards fossil fuel and also better than nuclear power. So it is a very competitive energy source, clean energy source. And you can see again, China, US, Germany, India, Spain, and others are really investing a lot in this. Next one. Hydropower. This has been an area that's been supplying a lot of the energy, about 16% of global power. And China, again, is leading in this. But the interesting thing is India, Brazil, Japan, Vietnam are all investing in this area. Next. And this slide is very interesting. It looks at the current investments in renewables, which is mainly in solar, wind, we've talked about that, but actually at the same time there are also investments in geothermal power, biomass, waste to energy. These are all rising, and particularly in some areas, waste to energy is very attractive. If you got an urban situation with where you can have a circular economy type concept. But the important thing, if you look forward, is that the growth and the generation costs are all becoming very competitive, and the International Renewable Energy Association have forecasted by 2020, renewable power costs of renewable generation will be competitive to fossil fuel. So by then there will not be an economical discussion about coal and oil versus wind. It's purely going to be a political or geopolitical selection because economic-wise it's going to be the same. Looking even further ahead, because by using all this conversion, global warming has been caused by CO2 emissions. And the conversion, the shift from fossil fuel to renewable helps to reduce CO2 reduction. But at the same time, fossil fuel still goes on. And the latest projection from IEA even projects by 2050, there's still going to be 10 to 20, 30% of the energy supply of the world still supplied by fossil fuel. So you need a solution which you can capture the CO2. And this is being done at this moment in time, particularly in the US and Canada. And the Canadian plant in Boulder is really already demonstrating it's working very well for the last 4 years. But the interesting thing is, look at here. China is doing 3 carbon capture storage projects. At the same time, there are interests also to investigate the geological structure around Hong Kong, Guangdong, and the South China Sea to investigate possible geological sites for these. And these will be very important for future carbon solutions for Hong Kong. Next one. But even looking further ahead will be what we call carbon capture and utilization. Once you capture the carbon dioxide, what are you going to do with it? Do you just store it in the ground or do you make something useful? This is not it was a concept 10, 20 years ago. Now it's a reality. My last company, SABIC, has already implemented the biggest carbon capture and utilization system in the Middle East, where they capture the carbon dioxide from a large number of chemical plants, collect it, purified it, and then use it to make clean plastic. A lot of companies and a lot of innovation and startup are working on this. And again, China is active in this. And this is an area where we can also work together on this, particularly with the talents that are in Hong Kong. This is a very interesting slide. If you don't believe in the economic benefit of the low carbon economy, this slide gives you the evidence to show you that the low carbon economic growth in the world has created 10 million jobs. These are independent figures from the International Renewable Associations. And actually, the amazing thing, if you look at the distribution of the jobs, you'll see China, Brazil are getting a lot of the jobs, but actually US, where they are saying that we don't believe in climate change, the president is saying, is actually generated 800,000 jobs in renewables. India, Japan, Germany are all getting a benefit of that. And looking ahead, the investment that China is making in its renewable area are expected to generate 13 million jobs in China alone. And in the UK, the green investment is expected to generate another 500,000 to 1 million new jobs after Brexit. So these are very important future growth areas. Now coming to Hong Kong, I'm not an expert on Hong Kong, but the Hong Kong Climate Action Plan is very ambitious. They want to cut the carbon emission by about 65 to 70% from 6.2 to 3.3. And that's very good, very ambitious. But at the moment, the 6.2 emission from Hong Kong is very high. Actually, it is the same as China, which is globally said to be a very polluting country. And the reason for that is because Hong Kong is burning a lot of coal. 50% of the electricity from Hong Kong is generated from coal, which is the same as China, and that's the reason. Coming to 3.3, that's very good, but that's up to your 1980 level only. And you have still some levels to go to meet the Paris Agreement. Looking to the Paris Agreement, of which Hong Kong's signatory is part of PRC, then you have to move towards the carbon neutrality goal by 2050 to 2070. So in this case, you must formulate forward plans which would further aggressively reduce your carbon emission in these areas. And we'll talk about the different options. Within the Hong Kong Climate Change Action Plan, the very good data, they provided very good data, and this gives you that Hong Kong is emitting 43 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And the reason for that is because most of it is generated by coal. And if you look towards 2030, this will be reduced coal burning percentages being substituted by gas and other clean energy so that it's lower. But coal is still going to be there by 2030 in Hong Kong. That's an important point to remember. And it's going to meet substitution will involve renewables and others like waste park and others. If you look towards the third to 2050, 2070 in the new plan, in the last talk I was invited to give with the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, I understand the Environmental Bureau say Hong Kong is now preparing the new climate plan, action plan. And these are different options, and they asked for my advice, and I suggested a few. Let me share this with you. Substitution, increase renewable, and these are in line with what other speakers have talked about. Increase renewables, and that could include offshore wind, and that could distributed power. Distributed power is really advancing very fast at the moment, and it can help with that. Overcome the land problem that a lot of people have on solar. Offshore wind utilizes the amount of ocean space you have around in Hong Kong. And the UK and Copenhagen are really going ahead on those already. Waste to energy, very important area. In China, 6 new waste to energy projects are being funded by the Asian Development Bank and going very fast. And in Hong Kong, I think this is an interesting area with your unique urbanization, gives you a lot of advantage in terms of collection and circular economy. Improving efficiency and saving, very important. Every time I go into a hotel in Hong Kong, I'm freezed to death. I don't know why, it's so freezing. In China already, they have set it to 26 degrees, the air conditioning. And in the last meeting I had with the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, the Hong Kong Club, they proposed, actually they said they proposed raising Hong Kong's temperature limit to 26 degrees for all air conditioning, which will save a lot of cooling power already. Natural gas import, that is going on. Import of gas, renewable and power, that's been talked about. Distributed power system, this is actually an advanced digital system which will allow Hong Kong actually to take the full benefit of solar and other renewable power, and something really worth investigating. Carbon solution is still new, but I think going to be a lot of interest because of the developments that are going on. Particularly, it could also generate raw materials, valuable raw materials for Hong Kong's a lot of manufacturing industries. Green low carbon transport, smart low carbon cities are all areas which are developing very fast, and there's a lot of international cooperation going on. Green innovations, company strategies, that is areas that will be developing, and I know your SFC is working in those areas already. So you will see a lot of push in these, if you could. Now looking quickly to China, because there is a lot of work going on in the 13th five-year plan, particularly ecological civilization. A focus on sustainable growth, restructuring, on environment and carbon reductions. There's renewable investment of 360 billion has been announced. And these will lead to strategic innovation and growth. And the NDRC projects that this will create 13 million new jobs in China. And then there's also coupling of all these investments with the Belt and Road, which is 500 billion investment. So altogether, you know, this whole thing is talking about near to $1 trillion of investment. And if you look at this, this is already having an effect. The energy growth in China is going down. Oil growth is slower, but gas growth is higher. And that's been tremendous growth in renewables. I mean, China is already, despite all this, China is now the top crude importer and the second biggest LNG gas importer. If you look at the growth for the next 30 years, non-fossil fuel renewables, natural gas are the main growth areas. But China is also doing a lot of work in terms of new energy cars, including electric cars, but it's called new energy car because not only electric, it's also hydrogen, it's also other cars. And these are under National New Incentive Program with subsidies and priority registrations with the aim to have 5 million electric vehicles. But these have led to a lot of innovations, with some of the Chinese company becoming some of the biggest company, like BYP, being one of the biggest company in the world, overtaking most of the other companies, and just after Renault and Nissan. And at the same time, there's a lot of cooperation between China and the UK in new material and battery research, particularly in graphene, which has been set up after President Xi Jinping's visit to University of Manchester. If you look at this, this is reflected in China's investments in renewable, which is going up. And then by comparison, you can see the investments in Europe are going, but there is flattening. Asia is going up, but also flattening. very important area with the huge amount of investment China is putting in. The Chinese government, from top down, is now working closely with other G20 governments, particularly with the UK, in improving corporate governance and transparency of its companies. And this is, they have now working very much on ESG, which is the environmental social government reporting. But looking ahead, they will be working together with the G20 Task Force on Climate Disclosure, which will cover areas on governance, strategy, risk management, and different matrices. This will have tremendous impact on all the listed companies in China and in Hong Kong. And this is an area which I would encourage you to know and get to know more about, because you will certainly be hearing about it, and certainly the SFC in Hong Kong is studying this and seeing how they would want to introduce it in the next few years to improve the governance of companies in Hong Kong. And as a global financial center, this is again a moving train which Hong Kong has to get on. So summarizing, I've talked about global climate actions, which are really a lot going on with the fossil fuel transformation, which is very, very going a lot. There's a lot of work, innovative work on carbon solutions. Low carbon economy is working and creating a lot of jobs in different countries. And Hong Kong has a lot of climate and energy challenges, particularly in electricity, carbon neutrality. And China is already launched its climate action plan, and they're working very hard on this in line with their Paris Agreement commitments. There are also international cooperation opportunities for Hong Kong, which Hong Kong can choose to participate. And these are really essential for Hong Kong's sustainable and environment and economical developments looking to the future. Last one. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions later on. Yeah.